Can a 7-times world champion settle for a simple podium? Or are we witnessing the beginning of their most epic redemption in Formula One? Despite all these factors, the most revealing has been the way Hamilton has expressed his situation. When he declares that a victory is a bit crazy, he does not do it from resignation. He does it from the tactical consciousness, from the understanding of where he is stopped within the current ecosystem of Formula One. And when he adds that he would love to climb to the podium, it is not a minor goal. It is a declaration of war adapted to its context. A podium today is worth more than an isolated victory. It is a necessary step to rebuild your trust, your internal status in Ferrari, and its connection with the public that still considers it a living legend. This first block of the season has not been the one who dreamed, but it can be the foundation of a powerful narrative. Hamilton, for the first time in many years, is not fighting from the top. He is climbing from below. And if you manage to turn this transition into a rebirth, we will be facing one of the most exciting narrative arches of your career. The Ferrari SF25 represents one of the greatest friction points between the expectations surrounding the arrival of Lewis Hamilton to Maranello and the reality with which it has been encountered. In theory, it was the car that should allow him to fight again for victories. In practice, it has been a constant source of frustration and technical challenges that neither the pilot nor the team have managed to solve completely. To understand the root of the problem, we must analyze how Ferrari has raised its approach for 2025. Unlike its most direct rivals, the Scuderia made a radical decision: completely freeze the development of the SF25 from before the middle of the season, with the aim of channeling all its resources towards the 2026 car, which is being developed with the new technical regulations in mind and is already in an advanced state of design. This movement, although it can make long-term strategic sense, has left the current car without real evolution for weeks. What this means for Hamilton is simple and forceful. The car that has today is practically the car that will have until the end of the championship. In terms of engineering, the SF25 has strong points, but also very marked limitations. In urban circuits, for example, it has demonstrated a mechanical grip superior to the average, a quality that can benefit Hamilton in paths like Baku. However, the car lacks aerodynamic consistency in high speed, which makes it difficult to balance when they face rapid curves or demanding changes. And this is where frustration enters. Hamilton is a pilot who bases much of his performance on absolute confidence on the rear train and the feedback of the front axle. The SF25, being unpredictable in certain temperature and aerodynamic load ranges, forces it to lead more conservatively, limiting its ability to attack performance edges. In addition, the current car's setup is largely built around Charles Leclerc's preferences. Monegasco, with more time in Ferrari, has progressively shaped the car's behavior in its style. Aggressive at the curve entrance with a rapid rotation, but at the expense of some instability in the middle phase. Hamilton, on the contrary, prefers a more linear transition between braking and acceleration with a more neutral balance. Adapting to a car with another management philosophy is not a matter of days. It implies reprogramming reflections, changing visual references, emphasizing the relationship with engineers, and, above all, assuming that the first weekends will be full of errors. In the universe of Formula One, where each millisecond becomes a declaration of intentions, the psychological factor not only accompanies performance, defines it. For Lewis Hamilton, this season's emotional component has acquired a completely different dimension. It is no longer about defending titles or consolidating legacies. It is, rather, to mentally survive in an environment that requires you to adapt to a new hierarchy, a different team dynamics, and a machine that does not yet speak to your language. From the outside, many can interpret their statement, "A victory is a bit crazy, but I would love to get on the podium," as a resignation, as a sample of resignation of a champion who no longer believes in his potential. But that would be not to understand who Lewis Hamilton is. These types of phrases, loaded with realism, actually represent an internal adjustment to the new coordinates of the challenge. Instead of putting impossible goals that would only bring frustration, it has redefined their personal victory. It is not to lift the trophy, it is to feel that it can compete with the best, that its presence on the grill is still relevant and feared. The inevitable comparison with Charles Leclerc is another crucial ingredient in this psychological process. The Monegasco pilot has been consistent, fast, and already adds 5 podiums in just 3 races. That statistic hits, not only for what it means for the championship, but for what it represents within the Ferrari ecosystem. Leclerc is no longer just the promising young man who needs a guide. It is, de facto, the #1 pilot. And Hamilton, that his entire career has been used to internally leading any team he reaches, is now in a secondary position. Not because the team has explicitly relegated it, but because the results speak stronger than any contract. That hunger for podium then is not a statistical need. It is a symbolic urgency. Hamilton needs that podium not only for the championship table, but for himself. To demonstrate the world and, above all, to itself that still has what you need to compete with the youngest, with the new talents, with the new generations that dominate the current F1 narrative. In that sense, his first podium with Ferrari has the potential to be one of the most important moments of his recent career, even more than a sporadic victory. In addition, this podium would represent an emotional victory on multiple fronts. It would validate your decision to change equipment. It would validate the technical effort you are doing to adapt to a car that was not designed to measure. And above all, I would send a clear message that it is still valid, that it is not time to write its epilogue. At this point, Baku becomes a scenario of psychological redemption. It is not any circuit. It is urban, technical, full of traps, with minimal margins for error. It requires trust, intuition, courage. If Hamilton manages to get on the podium here with a car that is not dominant and in front of rivals that arrive with better tools, that result will not only be one more number in their history. It will be a statement of identity, a reminder of who it is, of everything it represents. Under normal conditions, for a pilot with 7 titles in the world, climbing the podium should not represent a goal in itself. But Lewis Hamilton's situation in Ferrari in this 2025 is not at all a normal situation. The context redefines everything. And in that new framework, a simple third place can become a moral victory of gigantic proportions. Because that podium, beyond sports, encloses multiple layers of meaning that can directly impact on the immediate future of their career, on the public narrative that surrounds it, and in Ferrari's internal dynamics. First, we must consider the symbolic value that this possible podium has. Since his arrival in Ferrari, Hamilton has charged with a double responsibility: to demonstrate that he still has what is necessary to fight at the highest level and justify one of the most ambitious hiring in the recent history of sport. Hamilton's signing was not just a sports bet. It was an institutional statement, a media blow, an implicit promise that Ferrari would be again the real protagonist of the championship. Each race that passes without results feeds the doubt. Every weekend without podium erodes the story built around its arrival. Therefore, going to the podium would not simply fulfill a sports goal. It would be to start paying an emotional, symbolic, and narrative debt that has been accumulating from the preseason. A Hamilton podium would break that dynamic. I would change the internal perception of the equipment to balance the weight of strategic decisions, and could begin to influence the development of the car with views of future updates, even within the 2026 project. Because in Formula One, as in any high-pressure hierarchical structure, who delivers results is the one who gains voice. And Hamilton urgently needs to recover that technical and political influence within the team. In mood terms, the podium would also represent a break with the frustration cycle in which it has been caught. The first races of the year have been a roller coaster of technical adjustments, strategic disappointments, and mediocre results. Baku, due to its urban circuit nature, is a unique opportunity to reset that pattern. In this type of route, the car difference can be partially compensated with skill, decision, and trust. It is a scenario that, historically, has rewarded the pilots who dare to go to the limit. And if there is something that Hamilton has demonstrated over the years, it knows how to raise its performance when circumstances demand it. Getting on the podium in Baku with this frozen Ferrari in development would be a sample of pure talent and, at the same time, a massive motivation injection. This weekend in Azerbaijan represents, for him, more than a 4th season round. It is a perfect microcosm where all the forces that have defined their career converge. The need for adaptation, hunger for competition, the wounded pride, the technical challenge, the constant scrutiny, and the global expectation. All that condenses in a circuit that does not forgive mistakes, but that can also consecrate legends. In that context, there is no room for empty speeches or superficial promises. Hamilton has not promised victories. He has promised effort. He has shown vulnerability. He has spoken from the full awareness of his current limitations, but also since the conviction that he can still deliver something special. That honesty is not a sign of weakness. It is, paradoxically, his strongest statement. Because in a sport where everything is measured in tenths, recognizing that you are not at your best requires a force that not everyone has. If Hamilton manages to get on the podium this Sunday, the championship will not have changed. He will not shoot the leadership or become immediate candidate for the title. But something more important will have changed: the way in which its story is told within Ferrari. It will go from being a pilot in transition to a validated competitor. of being a legend that fights against time to a legend that still controls it. And above all, it will meet something that goes beyond the results. The feeling that all that effort, all that risk, all that sacrifice is worth it.